Hi friends, I'm Pam and welcome to A Scrappy Little Joy. Today is block 12 for our Weekly Whim project. If you joined me for my Scrappy Starter rail fence video, everything you never knew you wanted to know about the rail fence unit, today is an extension of that. So what we have, first of all, I'll set our box aside. I always like to bring our box, and sometimes I forget to reference it for those who are new to our channel. And first of all, if you are new to our channel, welcome. I hope you will stick around. I hope you will like, subscribe, share. We do all kinds of fun, scrappy, quilty projects here, including our Weekly Whim, which is our every Wednesday block that we are putting together. And here are some of our blocks that we are putting together one block at a time. So this is our block. Okay, first things first then, so all of our fabrics come either from our, let me move that because that's something I want to talk about, from our box where we have used these fabrics previously for previous blocks. And we're pulling from in here, and we're maybe sometimes introducing new fabrics if we want to bring more scrappies into our project. In the case of today's block, I always store my box under here, for those of you who have been sticking around for a while. All of the fabrics that I am using have been used previously. I mean, we are to that point. I have a couple more fabrics that are going to be coming into the continuum, but these fabrics are from previous blocks. And our block is called A Crossing of Paths. And it's a rail fence unit, and we will dip back into a little bit of what we learned about in the rail fence Scrappy Starters, everything you ever needed to know, everything you never knew you wanted to know about rail fence units. And the thing about rail fence is I call them units as opposed to blocks, because they really represent bits and parts of things. They can be, and in this case, they are units that are making up a larger rail fence type block. Anyway, so here's our block, and as you can see, it's a rectangle. Why is it a rectangle? Because we needed it in some place. And if you saw my little Halloween short about upcoming for the Whim, the quilt is all planned out. We've got our blocks all planned out. I haven't counted them yet, friends, but let me count them, and I will let you know between now and next Wednesday, or next Wednesday, one or the other. Okay, so here are some extra fabrics. Here is, remember, if you are new to our channel, our cutting instructions can be found always in the link in the description. The link takes you to my Pam Selkirk Designs blog, where you find the page that has all of the block cutting instructions. Then the instructions, if you will, or the how to assemble the block happens here, so that I can support you with tips and tricks and growing if you're a beginner. And even if you're not a beginner, I try to share things with you that you hadn't thought about before, or maybe they just occurred to me, or maybe I just learned them yesterday or the day before, which is the case with the rail fence, friends. We dig deep into this in my, so I'm going to put that right here. Also, yes, I do have our letter tiles. We do have the letter tiles sheet too. I don't know where that's at, but I always like to show that. We have our letter tiles sheet there to download as well if you need tiles to just keep track of your stuff, your units or your fabrics. Anyway, this is a very simple block, but there are some tricks to making it work well, and be sure to stick around to the end, because I have something I want to share with you that I learned as a result of making this block twice. Because I finished the whole thing and went, well, that's not okay. What happened there? So it's a cool tip that you'll want to know about. Okay, first things first, we've got all of our fabrics, and we need one of each. And I think these are, what we say, 1.5 inch by width of fabric strips. Okay, so what we're going to do is take our units, our fabrics. We're going to sew, first things first, fabric A to fabric B. Yeah. So A will be, and again, it's kind of tricky. You have to line them up. A goes to B. And you're going to find that these are all different lengths because every fabric, they just seem to have, I always think in terms of, I always plan for 42-inch width. That's just what I expect. Sometimes, often, especially with the fabrics in Serendipity Woods, if I'm being honest, they're usually 44. But depends, you got varieties here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to sew this strip, these two strips together lengthwise, and we are going to sew this, ready, at a 1/4 of an inch, a standard 1/4 of an inch, not a scant. And I'm going to show you why at the very end. I'm going to get started sewing this, and I am going to encourage Mr. Woods to zippy while I'm sewing this unit, all of these units together. We could really sew A to B, B to C, C to D, the way we have these configured. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll let him zippy zip here, but let's come back together when it comes to the point of pressing, because there are a couple of techniques that I'd like to share with you that make this easier than it could be otherwise. And we want to talk about which way we're going to press and all that. So pressing or sewing a 1/4 of an inch, all of our strips together lengthwise. Don't worry about pressing in between. We'll press those at the end. All right, here we go. One little tidbit I want to interrupt here. When you are sewing your strips together, try to always start at the same end. That way you know you've got the most use of this that you can. If you go wonky, then both ends are going to be wonky. Do you follow me? So like this will be short, this will be long, this will be short on both ends. You want to start at the same end on both for attaching all of your strips. That way you don't run into that wonkiness, and you get the most strip units, the most rail fence units out of this one strip. So especially with this project, we want to make sure that we have enough, and we will have actually almost just enough. We'll have just one extra. So, okay, back to work. Okay, my friends, we have all of our little strips sewn together. Do you know what I think I might do? I think I might scoochie my iron over here so that we can press together right here. Just get a little bit unorthodox, like switching things up a bit. This is a pressing table, if you didn't know that. Mr. Woods made this. It's on a cart. It's on wheels. We have 4 of them because they work for everything. He has one in his back. I call it the magic room because he does all kinds of fun stuff back there in our for making our pre-cuts and that sort of thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to open this up so that our seam allowances are on top, okay? So you got a lot of seams here, right? Because our block they're going together this way, no seam. Until we get to assembling the 2 rows together, no seam is going to bump up next to each other such that it's going to need to nest necessarily. And I always find that with rail fence units, whether they're 3 strips, 4 strips, 5 strips, 10 strips, rail fence units are most comfortable. They come out the straightest if they are pressed open. That's how I like to do things. So I always start on the outside. And we did cover this a little bit in my video. So I always start on the outside, and I'm hovering, okay? And then I'm pressing. And then I'm hovering and I'm pressing. Now that I say that, can you see me? I should be up here. Mr. Woods always reminds me, you got to be in the middle, and he's not wrong. I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, especially in this case when I'm pressing. Okay, so hover, 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 just to kind of get that seam open, right? I'm also tugging here, just a slight bit, so that stays nice, so that's nice and flat. See how that's just, if I'm pulling too hard, then I'm going to get it all warpy. Okay, so let's just do the second row. And I just have to get that open, and then I can hover, 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 press. And if I need to straighten it out, flatten it out, hover, 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 as I'm going along, press. That way I'm not twisting or the like. Okay, so, and then we'll start with this last one. And we'll hover, 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 and look, then we can kind of press on all of them so that we've got some weight on this side while I pull this open. Press, press. Usually I don't have Jane here. I have one of these tables in my, where are they? Yeah, I've got one in my office, or one in my studio proper. Mr. Woods has one in the back. He has two in the back. One of them's just using, it's got a plotter on it. We got to figure out what we're doing with that. He used it for some other stuff. It's a big printer. Anyway, we're just doing the same thing. Hover, hover, press, press, press. All the while, I'm just holding here so that I can pull that flat, okay? Without too much warping and twisting. Press, press. Hello, little friend. Press. One of our friends was mentioning, and she's not wrong, I have the same experience. It's pressing open isn't always easy because sometimes it's hard to get those two little seam allowances apart. I tend to, if I have trouble with that, I'll just give a tug like this, and sometimes it makes just kind of a little bit of a pucker there, and it separates them so that I can get my fingers in between there and get it open. But the nice thing about this is once we get started on one end, we can use the point of our iron to just lay that open and press. So it's just heating it, right? And then we'll get our second seam here. Press, press. Okay, and one last, and see how nice and straight this is? It's not warping at all. Sometimes it's hard when we are pressing all in one direction. Our rail fence strips want to bow like this, which is just not ideal for what we are going for. Okay, I am going to move this back here for the moment because I don't want to have to trip over that cord. That wouldn't be pretty, would it? Alrighty, so now what we'll do is we'll trim, we'll cut, okay? And there are tricks to that as well. I just need my small ruler, and what we're going to be doing is cutting 4.5 inch units from this strip. And as we spoke, now it's going to be a little tricky to see the green, but I think, you know what, I'm going to turn this around so that you can see where I'm lining up, because I want you to see that blue, okay? I want you to see the contrast. Okay, so we're going to start here. We're going to make sure we're lined up here across the top, straight across, because it's very easy to get twisty on this. And then I'm going to just go all the way to the end here so I can get as much as I possibly can out of this. And we are going to trim that off. Okay, now we're doing 4.5 inch units. So every time we cut a strip, we want to make sure that we are lined up straight across here and straight here, because it's going to change on us if we're not careful. And we're going to have to readjust. I bet I just cut myself. Ugh. I'm telling you, friends, I shouldn't be allowed to have a rotary cutter some days. They're sharp and they I bump myself. Okay, so we're just going to keep going down the line here. Nice and straight across there, nice and straight across. All right, and let's see how we're doing as we go. Still straight, still straight. Okay, now let's see what happens. we've made 3 cuts, okay? So let's line this up. Our straight line here. Look what's happened. We've got a little bit of a, it's twisted. So we've got to square it up again, friends. So now we're just going to go and just bring it on over. It's not much, but if we don't take that off, we're going to continue to go this way, right? And then our lines aren't straight, or our fence rails aren't straight, right? Okay. So then we can do a cut a little bit more. I'm going to just press that a little bit because we've got some wrinkles. Creases maybe more. There we go. And there kind of is no rhyme or reason, if I'm being honest. Like when I did our rail fence video, it didn't twist very much at all. Other times I'm like, what's happening here? And why one and not the other? And do you ever get to the point where you're so good at cutting it straight that it doesn't twist? I never do, because it always twists. Yeah, now here, we're starting to twist again. Can I make that? Yeah, I can make one more work. And it's pretty good, but I bet it's going to twist the next one. And I'm going to want to, I'm going to want to square it up. Yeah, I just need to square it up. I don't take much off, just enough to square it. Because you don't want to waste either. You don't want to have to cut a whole nother set of strip units just like for one guy, for one little guy, for one little unit, or one little, yeah, unit. Okay, how are we doing? Straight across. Yeah, so I believe, I wasn't counting there, but I believe this came out to 9. Half square triangle, I'm sorry, rail fence units. I don't know what we could do with that. That looks like we could do something fun with it. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Look, I'm just going to add these to my extras. Oh, wait, I have 3. What am I going to do with that? I don't know. Maybe I'll do something with that. Maybe I'll make something fun. Okay, now let's look at our illustration. And we are going to start to lay these out. I've got it laid out this way. I can't remember how it works in the quilt, but it doesn't matter. It actually goes this way in the quilt. So we are going to lay out I'm going to use our illustration like a good doobie and put that over there so I don't cut myself again. Good grief, let me just get a tissue for that. So I don't want to. There you go. Okay, all is well, just a tiny little cut. So what we're going to do is, in this case, let's just do them in columns. Let's do one column and then we'll do the other column. So we'll start like that, and then this is going to go like that, and then the next one has the D on the right. You come here and here and here. And there's a reason that I'm leaving my mat there. I could pick it up and move it, but I want to show you something at the end because it's going to be interesting. All right, let's just do this. We're going to do one column and we're going to sew each of these units together. And as you are going along, when we talk about pinning or not pinning, I always like to touch on this when we're sewing units together like this. These are pretty small. These are 4.5-inch squares. So I'm going to just, like I do, make sure that these 2 corners, or these 2 pieces right up here, I'm not even worrying about the bottom here. I'm not even worrying about that right now. This right here is lined up. And I'm going to get it under my presser foot, and I'm going to take a couple stitches. Oh, and what are we sewing this at? 1/4 inch, not a scant 1/4 inch, okay? I'm going to show you why. All right, now I've got that tacked under there, right? Ideally, having your needle down is good. And then I'm going to just grab my 2 ends here, and I'm going to make sure that they're even. If I need to do any tugging at all, I want as much room to be able to do that here. Okay, so I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to move over here, and I can grab all of these seam allowances. And as I'm going along, at my full 1/4 inch seam allowance, then I can just keep guiding it down the way. Okay, get my ender here. I feel like this is so good for my brain. I think in terms of healthy brain activity, have a little Alzheimer's in your family, and that's all it takes, right? And so my gram, my favorite person, had Alzheimer's and died not knowing any of us. So I think about little things that require my brain to have to work extra hard. I'm going to just sew this one in place. And the difference between sewing, going back and forth between sewing at 1/4 of an inch, which I'm doing with my unit, right? And then I'm going to grab these ends. And then once I get through this seam of full 1/4 of an inch, then I'm going to grab my ender. And my leaders and enders, I always make them scant 1/4 of an inch. And so then my little brain has to go back and forth, and I think, so good for you, little brain, to have to switch back and forth and remember to do that. So it's just little things that we can do to, I don't know if it makes a difference, but I feel like it might. I'm going to hope. Anyway, I'm a hopeful person, in case you didn't know. Okay, so now, yep, that looks right. I have to check it, double check it every time I'm doing it, girls and guys, because as we go along, sometimes I get chatty, and sometimes I'm like, what happened there? And heaven forbid, I like us to move along comfortably so that we don't have to rip seams out while we're doing this. But again, I remind you all, I rip out plenty of seams, even on the best of days, the most focused of days. I saw something yesterday, read something yesterday, that if you want to do better at remembering things, if there's something that you learn or are trying to remember, you should close your eyes for 10 seconds right after. So yesterday I said to myself, I placed my, okay, I'm not going to press that yet. I put some reference books that I always, and while we're talking, I'm lining this side up the way it's supposed to go. Some reference books that I very often have on my table, and I'm endlessly looking for ways to be more organized and have actually things put away instead of clutter, because clutter just makes me feel bogged down, if you will, in my studio. Anyway, so I thought the minute I put these books here, which are very easy for me to reach and grab, is the minute I'm going to forget where they are, and then I'm not going to have them, right? And so I closed my eyes, and I closed my eyes for 10 seconds and envisioned these books where I put them. And so this morning I woke up and I thought to myself, I wonder where those, I was thinking about those books, and I'm like, yep, I still remember where they are. So yay, 3 cheers for me and my little memory and my little experiment. So try that. Let me know how it works for you. I'm always feeling like the busier life gets, and Mr. Woods and I talk about this all the time, the busier life gets, the more we forget things that are just kind of going on a daily basis. I don't remember where we put that. Where did we put that? Keys, whatever. And so perpetually looking for ways to just always be thoughtful about our memories, right? And thoughtful about how to keep up with that kind of stuff. I think exercise helps. Staying busy. Mr. Woods and I are going out again to do the leaves. We've been staying up on that. So that comes up this afternoon. We go out every couple of days. I was thinking about this too while we were doing this the other day. He had the backpack blower, and I had the pull behind, whatever, call it, blower. And we had been doing stuff together like that for so long that I was blowing the leaves in one direction, and he was coming behind me and then blowing them, like supporting the way I was blowing them. It's a process. It's a dance, blowing the leaves and coordinating the leaves. I don't know how we got on that subject, but I figure we might as well talk about fun things. Yep. Full 1/4 of an inch hairpin. Okay. So now what we're going to do, once we get this little guy in place, we're going to sew this together. Well, we're going to press first. And then we're going to sew this together, and I want to show you why I had to remake my block. Okay, so let's press these seam allowances down so that they all go down, and these so that they all go up. And let me just make sure, you see what I just did there? I did it wrong. Or I inverted it when I laid it down. See, I could have messed that up. That would have been a real pain. That and that. Good, so these guys are going down. And these we can press on the front if we want, just pressing. There we go. Okay, and then these we're going to press up. Now, as we join these together, it wouldn't be the worst idea to pin here so that you know where your guys are going to nest here, because we're going to have some nesting here. All right? But I'm going to try and do what I've been doing, which is just take a hold of that. Okay, you little friends need to go there. And I'm going to start my seam, full 1/4 of an inch, joining these two sides together. And then I'm going to hit this, I'm going to get a hold of this first seam allowance, and I'm going to hold it tight. And I'm going to scoochy these guys all over as I go. And if I have to, and see, I'm holding my thumb here so that I don't lose that connection, those two guys right together. Okay, now we're right here, making sure that they're happy. And once I get over that hump, that seam allowance, then I can move to the next one and I can do the same thing. I want to make sure all my seam allowances underneath are going in the same direction, are going in the direction I want them to be going, which in this case is open. I'm going to put my finger there. And in the case of pressing or pinning all of these, we certainly could. And now see, I've gotten across that one. Now I'm going to move to the next one. It can be a lot if you are sewing this, if you're doing this with a big, lengthy, like you're sewing rows of blocks together, let's say. And certainly rows of blocks that are not all the same block. Okay, I got to there. Now I'm getting to here. And I'm generally holding, I'm using lots of fingers, holding here, right? Those are the little proficiencies that you can come up with and get good at as you go along to strengthen your ability to have proficient blocks, even blocks, without always having to pin. And also a healthy sense, frankly, friends, of not sweating it if they don't line up. It really does depend on how important it is to you. Okay, in this case, I mean, it's kind of a long seam to press open, but look what happens. This one tends to want to go that way, this one tends to want to go this way, and that way, and that way. So I kind of feel like it makes sense to press it open, because then we can let each direction have its way a little bit, right? So that's what I'm going to do. It's interesting how blocks just have a lean that they want to go in. And I like to give them the comfort to move, to go whichever way. Okay, so if possible, I should say. So I am just floating and then pressing, floating and then pressing. And then I'm going to flip it over. And here I could be tempted to spray starch or use water. And there's a reason I'm telling you this. Stick with me here, friends. Okay, so at this point, our unit, our block, it's a full block, should measure 8.5 by 16.5, right? Because these are effectively two 8-inch blocks. So look, let's see what we have. So we're going to go down here. Yep. 8.5 inches, friends. And look over here. 16.5 inches. There, right? We sewed this at a full 1/4 inch seam allowance. Guess what the first block was that I sewed together that told me I had to redo it? Finished the whole darn block, the whole thing. And I just laid it out. You know, I thought, okay, I stuck my little pin here so I could keep track of the difference. This block, because I sewed it at a scant 1/4 inch so that all of my seams had just a tiny bit more room, this gave me a block that is 8 3/4, almost 8 5/8. Yeah, well, no, about 8 3/4 by 17. See how much extra space that gave me just by doing this whole block, sewing all of these together with a scant 1/4 inch. That's why we needed this to be a full 1/4 inch, because we didn't want any more room, okay? So the other thing I want to show you is you can kind of see when I'll use this block to spray, or was this one? No, that's good. I'm going to spray this with water. Ugh, it's all the way down here because you know I knocked it over. And I want to show you what happens. I did this with another block that I was working with. So I've sprayed it with water. Use spray starch. Try that. So now I'm just pressing. And then what starts to happen is my blocks, because these are going opposite directions, they're starting to want to shrink lengthwise. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Look what I did. Look what happened. See how that kind of bowed and this kind of bowed? Because I got it wet and then I steamed it. So it kind of wanted to shrink. Now, can I pull this back out and straighten it again? I can. And it's not that big of a deal. But I just wanted to show you how that can cause some shrinkage lengthwise. See, these are, I should say, selvage to selvage. So anyway, there's that. Here is our actual block. 12, all ready for us. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned some. I hope you also will go back, if you haven't seen my Scrappy Starters series, Everything You Never Knew You Wanted to Know About the Rail Fence Unit, go look at it. It's great. Also, I'm sharing about my new A Song to Sing collection in that video right here. Shipping to shops. I think it's this week, maybe next week. Right there. I'm so excited. This little block, there's a little bit of maybe an opportunity for you to make this little block there if you like. And one last thing, all of the quotes in my Soul Speak fabric collection, or Soul Speak fabrics, there are 5 in A Song to Sing. You'll start to see them populating here. So they're encouraging quotes. They're not just words, okay? They're quotes that I have chosen to be encouraging. So that particular print in my A Song to Sing collection for Andover Fabrics, I don't want to forget, they have been so gracious in supporting me. Those prints are in here as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about this once the fabrics arrive to me. These are just my sample fabrics. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time.